welcome everyone to the first virtual installment for the 2021 season. We had the honor to host one of these virtual events last year. We loved it so much that we just wanted to keep that same energy going. So our goal with these happy hours is always to educate, inspire, and motivate our audiences. So in honor of Black History Month, we wanted to reach out to various organizations that we felt embodied the conversation for Black advocacy, and as well as in honor of Black History Month. Now, with that being said, we have an illustrious group of panelists for you all. Specifically, Mr. Ron Miles, Director of Communications from the South Florida People of Color Organization, as well as Ms. Marilyn Holifield, co-founder of Miami Museum of Contemporary Art of the African Diaspora, aka MOCAAD, as well as Artistic Director, Mr. Peter Bito London, and one of the PLGDC dancers, Mr. Terrence Pride. Thank you all for taking the time out to join us tonight and speak to our audience members. So to tell you all a little bit about how the night is going to flow, we will hear from each panelist, as well as enjoy some excerpts from some past PLGDC productions, and then end with a nice Q&A session. So to start off, I just want to go down the line and allow each panelist to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about yourself as well as your organization, and then also talk to us a little bit about how your art form contributes to the conversation for Black History Month, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement, and maybe just share some key takeaways that you want to leave our audience members. So I'd like to kick it off with Mr. Miles.
Thank you very much, Zaylin. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight to participate in this Black History Month event, a virtual libation. You know, we wanted to do something fun with the happy hour term, but really, honestly, we want to call upon our ancestors, because that's what we do as people of African descent. We call upon our ancestors to guide us in the work that we do and in all the endeavors that we take and make. So I'm happy to be here tonight to participate in a conversation about advocating for pro-Black agency, Black expression, and Black justice. I am an educator by trade, craft, training, education, and experience. I work with a variety of organizations, and right here in South Florida, I work with the group that I'm representing tonight called the South Florida People of Color, which is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to racial healing. And what that means is we are dedicated to disrupting racism and bigotry by providing creative programs for open dialogue and personal interaction across all sorts of divides, whatever divide people tend to separate themselves on, whether it's racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, religious. We believe in bringing people together to break down those cultural borders that separate us and keep us from fully engaging each other and understanding and working together to live in a bias-free, if you will, or a stereotype-free world where people can commit to excellence and do great work. And that's what Black History Month represents to me. Black History Month represents a time where, and speaking of libation, let me take a little bit of water. A time where we look back on the excellence of various individuals, some named and some unnamed, that have sacrificed and that have persevered and that have risen to the challenge of the day. And we need to look back on the accomplishments. And I think that's what Dr. Carter G. Woodson had in mind when he started with looking at the history of Black people, which a lot of times have been omitted from the pages of history books. And I would know, because prior to being a classroom teacher, I was a distributor of textbooks to school districts throughout the United States. I worked for one of the largest textbook companies. And I was able to go into classrooms throughout the United States, and I would see a a lot of things that contribute to why we have the kinds of problems we have today, with people fully appreciating and knowing about each other and what makes America the country that it really is, because we've all made a contribution. And so South Florida People of Color has all sorts of programs that allow people to come together to increase their education on how to appreciate how people came to this country, right? People of African descent were forced to migrate to the United States. And that is an important fact to keep in mind when you look at the experiences that people of African descent have continued to encounter throughout the trajectory of the development of this country. And so as an educator, first as a lover of dance, when I was a kid, I joined an organization that helped to occupy inner city youth during the afternoons after school, so they would not be on the streets, getting involved with the traps that are laid for people who don't have a lot of economic resources to occupy their time. And so I'm grateful to Donna Chavy Hoskins, the director of the Young and Old United to Help program out of Oakland, California, where I'm from. I believe Oakland is probably the blackest city in the United States. I think the creators of Black Panther realized that too, and that's why Wakanda had a direct link to Oakland. And I think that also has a direct link to why I believe it is my duty to fight for social justice in all that I do, whether it's being someone who teaches English to speakers of other languages. That's really my craft. I work with people whose first language is not English to help them better communicate in the English language. That's actually something I had to go through myself. Again, being from Oakland, the home of Ebonics, I learned the standard variety of English so that I could excel and eventually go to an Ivy League university. And even that experience exposed me to other languages. So I majored in Romance languages, and that's what makes my work with people who don't speak English so much easier, because I understand the plight of what it takes to actually acquire a second, a third, and even a fourth language. One of the best parts about specializing in languages is my ability to code switch. And living in Miami, you have to do that. I can go to any Publix, anywhere in the city and have to speak Spanish. And I've learned enough Haitian Creole to be able to speak pleasantries to my Haitian brothers and sisters too, because this is what the Miami location allows for people from all sorts of backgrounds to come together and coexist. And we have to decide, how well do we want to coexist? Do we want to continue to be divided, or do we want to reach deep down inside and look at what's common between us? And what I love about being a person of African descent is that you realize that your community is global. I am grateful that I speak Portuguese, because I've spent a lot of time in Brazil. And in Brazil, you know that it has the highest concentration of people of African descent outside of Nigeria. So that means there are 53 countries in Africa that have fewer Black people than Brazil. And the third population is the United States, and the fourth largest concentration of Black people is in the country of Colombia, where I also went. And if you've ever been to Cartagena, you'll learn about Palenque, which is one of the first freed locations for runaway slaves in Colombia. And they stayed free for a very, very long time. And you hear those stories. And for me, one of the best experiences I've had being a part of this African diaspora and being a language teacher and teaching English to speakers of other languages is being able to go to Haiti to teach English to individuals who are studying to become nurses so that they can help people in Haiti with their health needs, and also tourists who may decide to start traveling to Haiti once things clear up over there. But what an amazing experience to go to the first free former enslaved nation in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, the people there are so amazing. And I just wish that the attitudes that people heard about and learned about the Haitian people were more positive. And living in Miami and being in the educational community, I'm doing what I can to first of all, lift up Black people in all lights, no matter where we find ourselves. And in using my ability to communicate, speaking of which, we have to learn to address each other with regard, right? That's what I teach people to do with the English language. When you come to interacting with people of color, whether it's back home in Cuba, whether it's back home in what other country where there are Black people, we have to begin to lift them up and appreciate them and respect the contributions. So there's Black history in the United States, there's Black history wherever Black people are. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of that international community. And so South Florida people of color and I personally are very grateful to be a part of the Peter London Global Dance Company and the wonderful work you're doing here in South Florida to show what Black agency looks like and what Black expression looks like, how we all come together and fight for social justice. And with that, I turn it back to my esteemed panel.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Miles. Clearly you are a man of many talents. And
thank you.
I just love how your passion is to truly uplift and inspire our community, especially, like you said, through your love of dance, as well as your other programs and from the South Florida people of color. So truly, thank you for that, sir.
You're welcome.
Next, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Holifield, who most recently also premiered in PLGDC's production of Woman Roses Water, where she presented an excerpt from her book, 7 Sisters and a Brother. And we actually have a clip to share with you all this evening.
My inspiration to open doors to unfamiliar racial terrains flows from several generations of my family's resistance to second-class racial status dictated by Jim Crow laws and American traditions. I do not know how my grandfather and grandmother, son and daughter of slaves, acquired a 500-acre farm in Scott County, Mississippi. Family stories tell of my grandfather, my father, and his 9 brothers successfully defending their family farm against the Ku Klux Klan. My father left Mississippi for college and later acquired a farm in the outskirts of Tallahassee, Florida. He planted roses underneath my bedroom window. And I loved my mother's beautiful smile when he surprised her with bouquets of red roses from his garden. My father's quiet determination accentuated my mother's brisk Boston, Massachusetts pace and her impatience with racial suppression. At times, when I looked at my father's rose garden through my bedroom window, I wondered whether my mother, her 3 sisters, and brother liked Boston's snowy winters. My father showed me the beauty of roses and taught me to face Jim Crow with courage. My mother's smile showed me the joy and beauty love brings, and she taught me the courage to dream. Mom's strength in meeting multiple rejections with persistent determination inspired me at a young age. My mother won a long-fought battle of petitions to the Leon County School Board becoming founding director of the licensed practical nursing program. Her tenacious spirit showed me that doors closed by racism could be pried open. Together, their unrelenting spirit to serve others and build their business taught me to press forward, to seek the promise of freedom from intimidating Jim Crow laws and traditions. My 2 years of enduring racial hatred up close at Tallahassee's formerly all-white Leon High School made going up north to Swarthmore College my grand escape. From entry day to graduation, virtually every day I was called the N-word at Leon High. Piercing hatred can be numbing. The day I was splattered with raw eggs coming off the school bus was the day I resolved they would never chase me away. Somehow, the splash of yolk and messy wetness made me feel weak and strong at the same time. Weak because it was the first time and the only time white hatred rushed tears down my face. Strong because it fired up an inner spirit that kicked away any notion of surrender.
Every time I see that clip, it gets more and more powerful. And I also just want to add that, of course, Seven Sisters and a Brother is currently available on Amazon for purchase, and all proceeds will be donated to Swarthmore College through the Seven Sisters and a Brother Black Study Fund. And without further ado, I present Ms. Holifield.
Thank you so much, Zaylin. And thank you, Peter London, for having the brilliance and the imagination to create and adapt my chapter as a first installment of a dance adaptation of our collective memoir. And thanks to all of you who are out there joining us this evening. For me, I always or oftentimes start with a quote from our godmother of African-American art history, Dr. Samela Lewis. She said, and I love these words, art is not a history, as many people think. It is a necessity. It documents history. It helps educate people and stores knowledge for generations to come. Our collective memoir, in some sense, stores history as a writing art form. Our collective memoir reveals a hidden story of invisible students who changed a college forever with its 8-day occupation of the admissions office in January of 1969. And years later, the president of Swarthmore College, Rebecca Chop, during the celebration of the 150-year history anniversary of the college, said that 8 days of occupation, that 8-day sit-in by students who were barely 20 and many were teenagers, was the most consequential event in the entire history of the college. I say this because it was back in 1926 when Dr. Carter G. Woodson started Black History Week. Dr. Carter G. Woodson obtained his PhD from Harvard in 1912. And we now know that Black History Week has evolved to, well, Negro History Week has evolved to Black History Month. For me, I see Black history every day. I see Black history in everything about our lives. The forcible removal of Africans to the Western world, to Western Europe, to the Americas for enslavement to create free wealth touches every aspect of our lives, either directly or indirectly. Of course, it touches history, culture, but it also touches science, sociology, and everything. If you open your eyes, you will see that that history of our ancestors being forcibly removed from Africa for enslavement has shaped and developed the Western world that we are still trying to discover because our history has been hidden. I think that our book, and of course, the museum that a group of volunteers seek to establish, the Miami Museum of Contemporary Art of the African Diaspora, Miami MOCAAD, we seek to reveal what Dr. Lewis says, but we want to reveal it not only to our brothers and sisters of every persuasion right here in Miami-Dade County, but we want to give this gift to the world because contemporary art interprets history, but it also interprets what we are doing today. And it is the artists who can see what we ordinary people can't see. It's the artists who hear, who feel what we don't see and feel. It's the artists that see beauty when others see sorrow. It's the artists who see triumph when there has been defeat. It's the artists who teach us how to live, who provoke us to engage. It's the artists who inspire us to keep pushing forward in song, in dance, in spoken word, in writing, in performance art. And that's one of the reasons why it is just so wonderful to be able to collaborate with the Peter London Global Dance Company. When Peter first told me that he had imagined a dance out of our book and wanted to adapt our entire book to dance, unfortunately, the pandemic only allowed the first installment on my chapter. I said, what genius. And he doesn't know it, but I fell in love with him because I just appreciate the creativity of Black art genius. Our collaboration started with Miami's mission of giving platform to Black voices, to Black art of the diaspora. We were so honored when Peter London agreed to be featured in one of what we call creative conversations. And it was one of our most exciting creative conversations. And one thing this pandemic has allowed us to do is to reach across boundaries by generating programs that are virtual. We look forward to an enduring relationship. We look forward to, and I know that the sky is the limit to the type of collaborations that Peter London Global Dance Company and the planned Miami Museum of Contemporary Art, the kind of collaborations that we can get together and make good trouble to change Miami and indeed change the world. So thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And of course, thank you, Ms. Holifield. What you have planned with Miami MOCAAD is truly amazing, just because there's so much rich history throughout our culture that needs to be celebrated and preserved. So we definitely thank you for bringing that to the South Florida community. And as well as some of our attendees have also given their compliments. Denise mentioned that you're such a brilliant woman and that she loves you. And of course, Cameron, who also mentioned that art is definitely necessary. Thank you for having this conversation with us. And so now I want to turn it over to the man who needs no introduction, the brains behind this whole entire company, Mr. Peter Bido London, our artistic director.
Good evening, everyone, and our guests who are participating with us. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Zaylin, doing a brilliant job. And thank you, Ron, South Florida people of color, absolutely fabulous. I'm thrilled that you have agreed to share your brilliance and all your richness with us and the community and those of us who attend, those of us who are attending this program this evening. Ms. Holifield, brilliant, always giving me goosebumps whenever I see you in performance. Absolutely wonderful. And thank you for your generous comments about the company and the possibilities that can happen between Miami MOCAAD and the Peter London Global Dance Company. We're looking forward to the development to come. Also, I want to thank Mr. Terrence Pride, one of our dancers, who are here with us this evening. You'll hear from him later on. I'm originally from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And as a young kid, around 6 years old, I got to participate against my parents' wishes. I will run away from the house. Around 12 o'clock at night, I'll put newspaper in the door, pull it in. I'd sneak out from my bedroom and go across the street to go to the West African Yoruba ceremonies with the Orishas, you know, Shango and Oshun and Yemanja and Legba and so on and so forth. And then about 3 o'clock, sneak back in the house. Sometimes the door would be wide open, you know, but I still do it. And that's where I got my first experience of African traditional dance and music and culture. And then later on, in 1972, I started dancing formally with being trained in the other retention of African dance from the Congo, Sierra Leone, Dahomey, which was the Haitian dance, and all the different styles of African dance that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And around that time, 1972, there was a Black Power movement in Trinidad where the Africans and Indians came together to relieve themselves of the devastation of colonialism that was still holding on to all the power in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of education, jobs, and so on and so forth. And my father, Dennis Bido, who came from Carriacou, was the Secretary General of the Union of Commercial and Industrial Workers, and would be one of the men that will go to help unionize the factories throughout the country. Big guy, 6 foot like 6, and he will stand there to make sure the scabs, they call them scabs, people wouldn't come in to work to disrupt the unionization. And so when I hear the throng of people coming through the streets, and I was like, what is that? He says, the Black Power movement, you know, they're gonna try to change the country. I said, I wanna go, and my mother said, no, they're gonna kill him. My father said, no, let him go. And I ran out of the house and joined the march. I traveled for miles and miles with them. I didn't know where I was when it got dark and had to find my way back home. But when I came back, my life was changed forever. So my dancing, which was just fun, turned into something much more serious, whereby I felt that I had a duty and a responsibility to pass on the tradition of the West African dances that was given to us by our forebears, and to make sure that it counted for something. So that led me eventually to try to get training at the highest level, where I would take forms of dances that were already created for the theater and so on and so forth, and blend it with our West African tradition dance. So that led me to the Juilliard School, and a full scholarship from Alvin Ailey to study at the Alvin Ailey School, from Alvin himself, who invited me to dance with his company. And then the Jose Limon Dance Company. And then later on, once I finished that, dance with Martha Graham, and came down to Miami to teach at the Newell School of the Arts, where I'm still at. But other people in the community invited me to come and teach at the African Cultural Heritage Arts Center, and in South Miami at Dance Empire. And so there I met I had the African diaspora people at the African Heritage Cultural Center, all those kids, phenomenal kids. And then the kids, Jewish, Latin, everybody, white, in Dance Empire in Pinecrest. And they were all asking me, especially the Black kids in Liberty City, create a dance company for us like Alvin Ailey and Martha Graham. I says, no way I can do that. It costs a lot of money, a lot of work. I can't do that. And they kept on, their parents and so on and so forth. People in the community said, please do it. It took 10 years before I decided to go ahead and try it. And it turned out to be, you know, the company that will support not just the African-American kids who needed a place to express themselves and tell their stories, but inclusive to other dancers in the community, whether they were white, Jewish, Latin, and so on and so forth. And I did that so that they could all share their experiences together, work with each other, and develop a new concept of how we can be cooperative with each other in the community, especially here in South Florida, where we have all these different people from all different parts of the world. You have a group of young people working together and creating phenomenal art and demonstrating that, yes, people from all cultures, background, caste, if you want to call it that, can work together and produce at a very high level. And that is what we've done for the past 10 years as we celebrate in our 10th anniversary. So that's the Peter London Global Dance Company, and it's also my contribution to the Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, because everything that we do there is represented, is supporting Black lives, our movement forward, taking everything that I was given from my ancestors and passing it on to the next generation and showing them how they can move our people forward and bring other people with them. And it's not that that was the first time. We always had abolitionists and so on and so forth, moving and coming together with Black people to help them move forward. Harriet Tubman also had white folks who were helping her in Boston and other places to bring slaves out from Mississippi into the North and so on and so forth. So I always felt that I should have other people involved in helping us move forward and helping them move forward, because when we have equality and equity for everyone, everyone benefits. And so that's my contribution to the Black Lives Matter and Black history moving us forward. Thank you.
And definitely thank you, Mr. London, for creating this company and truly creating a space that celebrates our rich and diverse culture and educates the community. Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, one of the dancers with PLGDC who most recently joined the company, Mr. Terrence Pride. Mr. Pride, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yates. I appreciate that. Greetings and humble salutations, everyone. My name is Terrence Pride. I'm a graduate of Florida A&M University in theater, performance, and dance, as well as Florida International University in urban education. And I also pursue a concentration or a certificate in African diaspora studies, which kind of assists me in all of my contributions and endeavors when it comes down to progressing the Black experience and Black history as a whole. I'm honored of Mr. London allowing me to dance with his company, the brilliant company that is Peter London Global Dance Company. Thank you, Mr. Mouse, for everything that you all have shared, and Ms. Holifield for your amazing performance in our show, The Crossings in 2019. It was phenomenal, and I enjoyed it. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Black Men Stories, but in Women Roses Water in our season this past year. So about myself, I consider myself to be and to make my contributions in two forms. First as an artist and then as an educator. I've trained as a dancer since high school. And as I said, continuing through Florida A&M University and then joining the Peter London Global Dance Company. And the amazing thing about Peter's company, only as far as an artist, being an artist is concerned, is that it teaches us, it provides a space for artists like myself, dancers like myself, to perfect their artistry. You know, to their dancing and technique is only one portion, right? But to me, to be an artist, you know, is to be effective with your art, you know. And so Peter allows us a space to be effective and to embrace our humanity, you know, when it comes down to being dancers and everything that comes along with that. And so in providing that particular space, one particular virtue that I think is extremely important that I would really love people to know is the virtue of identity, right? For us, me, a Black man living in America, right, to be able to not just identify myself, but understand what identity means, and learning that even more so through a vehicle and a vessel such as the Peter London Global Dance Company, through our experiences of dance as a whole. I very quickly want to touch on a dance that we did in 2019. Specifically, it's called Black Men Stories. And being new to the company, this was my debut performance. And Peter not only tasked me with the great and very illustrious opportunity to open that particular performance with the first solo, right, which is a contribution and a testament to all the other Black men before us, all of the amazing scholars, all of the men on the front line of the Black Power movement and things of that nature from the past. So to begin that was a great honor. And then not only that, but more specifically to share that stage with, oh my gosh, so many other amazingly talented dancers, people who are, you know, doing amazing things like Lloyd Knight with the Martha Graham Company currently right now, people like, you know, Gentry George and just so many people that I didn't know before. The amazing and beautiful Vitolio, who dances with Garth Fagan's company. And so to share that stage with other male dancers in that magnitude, everybody being on one accord, sharing that type of energy, telling those stories, just that experience alone is one that if I had to sum it in one word, I would say it was divine, right? You don't get a lot of opportunities like that. And so again, thank you to Peter for creating such a space to where not only are we, you know, showcasing, you know, these stories or telling these stories, and to be able to give back to the community, to educate our community, to be a representation, right, of what Black men can do, you know, to other little Black boys and girls too in the audience, right, and teaching even those who don't identify as Black in the audience what that experience is like for us as Black men, right? The other side to that is that we too, right, get to be enriched and to be fulfilled and manifest some things within ourselves just from being in the space, right? And being able to propel each other into different types of, in different spaces with the energy being on stage. Now, the second part to, you know, how I contribute to the progression of, you know, Black history is through education. Definitive arts education is arts integrated curriculum for classroom teachers that combines common core curriculum and elements of dance and theater to keep the arts alive and breathing within education, right? So we have all these issues when it comes down to diversity and inclusion that everybody's on a Zoom call probably today and all day, right? With all of the things that are happening, you know, in real life. And now education wants to, you know, make a space for diversity and inclusion. And I say include the arts, you know, include the arts more, and that's your diversity, that's your inclusion. You know, if you include the arts, then who could ignore, you know, the dynamics of arts itself, you know? And so getting artists, you know, like myself and other members in the Peter London Global Dance Company, getting them into schools to where they can have that representation and they can integrate, you know, different things of that nature will ensue the fact that you then begin to share that and you open up that experience to other individuals, not just to underprivileged, you know, schools, not just to urban school communities, but to all schools across the, you know, the entire spectrum, because it is important in our neighborhood and in our communities, but it's even more important in the non-Black communities and schools as well. Because when we're talking about education, I like to think that we know our experiences best versus having someone to tell us what it is that we're experiencing. And so, again, I leave you all with the thought of Nina Simone, who really, really invigorates everything that I do and that I, you know, the energy that I use behind the legacy that I wish to leave behind. And Nina Simone said, the artist's duty is to reflect the times. And by doing so, we shape and mold our country. And so my goal, again, is to shift that entire narrative when it comes down to, you know, Black people and the Black lives and the Black experience by telling these stories, you know, using my art, you know, such as the videos that I did over the summer, a series of videos that to me were supposed to be a form of therapy and emotional support that was a contribution in my protest to those individuals who lost their lives to, you know, racial injustice and police brutality, right? And so doing things like that, from my experience, from my voice, that is what, you know, we should be doing. That is what the narrative is supposed to be, not one that is about us told by someone who doesn't know the experience. And so again, making sure that the narrative of the Black experience is told by people like ourselves in our own voices. And it's, to me, it pretty much puts a staple on what Black history is, right? The amalgamation of many things beyond just our struggles of racism, social injustice, and, you know, the lack thereof, or whatever the case may be, as well as the Black excellence piece, right? All the progression that we've had, you know, with, you know, the first, you know, vice president of, you know, a female woman of color. And so all of those things put together, but the focus of it all is the cultural capital, right? Us building a community that is able to give back, right? We have so much now that we're able to give back, and it continues to grow day in and day out. And so what Black history, in my mind, should be, right, is that piece, is us continuing to build on that capital, you know, continuing to assess how much capital we have, how much we can give back to, and are we assessing those areas that, you know, that needs to be accessed. And so making sure that not just, again, our community is, you know, in the knowing, but everyone as a whole is in the knowing when it comes down to whose experience it is and who's telling the story.
Well, truly, thank you for that, Mr. Pride. It sounds like you have truly just taken your art form and made it a part of your essence. You eat, breathe, and sleep it. And I believe also that the videos you spoke of, that everyone can find that located on your website. That's also in the chat as well if they want to take a look. And I think that's a perfect segue, because you mentioned Black men's stories, and we actually have some great excerpts from that wonderful production. Mr. London, would you mind just taking a minute or so in the last 10 minutes of our show to explain your motivation behind Black Men's Stories?
Black Men's Stories is a continuation of what I call the relay race of moving the African diaspora forward. Like I said, I was handed down the tradition of West African dance in the Caribbean, from Carriacou, Grenada, all the different Martinique, Guadeloupe, all those Africans who came to Trinidad and Tobago and brought those dances with them. And within that structure, the stories are told about the people who are on the front lines of fighting for freedom, like my father and so many others. And I just want to mention that quickly, that any man that was on the front lines, there was a woman in the background making sure that he can stand up or get up one time to go to be in the front lines, and when he come back to heal his wounds and send him back out again onto the field. So when we say men on the front lines, we also mean women on the front lines as well, because my mother was one of them. When the people came back from fighting to unionize the factories, my mother will have to get up early in the morning and make the breakfast and stuff for 15, 20 people sleeping on our living room floor, so that they can get nourished, so they can get up and go and fight again for the next day. So there were always women there, and that's, I think, sometimes a mistake we make when we do not include women when we say men on the front lines. Men on the front lines can only be on the front lines because they're women right there with them, taking care of business, fundraising, doing all kinds of different things, and taking care of the children, and so on and so forth. So I always say that women are the anchors of our families and anchors of our community. And when we lose our anchor, then the ship goes adrift. So we must always remember to take care of our women, sisters, girls, aunts, grandmothers, and so on and so forth in our community. Do not leave them behind. Do not let them fall onto the streets. Do not let them fall apart. So the Black History Month, this Black Men's Stories, to try to tell the story of the fighters from the very beginning all the way to now, going back Marcus Garvey, Toussaint Louverture, into the more present of Martin Luther King, and so on and so forth. And doing some research on that, going to Washington, D.C. at the African American Museum of Art and Culture, doing the research there, and then creating stories based on their writings, and then having the dancers dance to those stories and have a composer work with them to create music for the dance. So that's it. That's what it's about.
We are natives of this country. Not a few of our fathers suffered and bled to purchase its independence. We ask only to share equal privileges. Peter Osborne, let us all unite and declare that we will not leave our own country. This is our country. Our forefathers have planted trees in America for us, and we intend to stay and eat the fruit.
Overthrowing me, you have cut only the trunk of tree of liberty. I will spring up again, for its roots are numerous and deep. Whatever defamation of character my enemies are spreading about me, I do not feel the need to justify myself toward them, while discretion obliges me to remain silent.
I have often, in the deep stillness of a summer Sabbath, stood all alone upon the lofty banks of that noble bay, and traced with saddened heart and tearful eye the countless number of sails moving off to the mighty ocean. The sight of these always affected me powerfully. My thoughts would compel utterance, and there, with no audience but the Almighty,
a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, or culture is like a tree without roots. the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. If there is anybody in this land who thoroughly believes that the meek shall inherit the earth, they have not often let their presence be known. Children learn more from what you are than what you teach. Believe in life. Broken winged bird that cannot fly. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or does it explode? Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant.
Well, I'm not being biased, but I just have to say that before I joined the company, I saw that performance 3 different times because it was just so fantastic. And I know that we're drawing near to the end of our event tonight, but we do have one more excerpt to show from you from Black Men's Stories as well. Peter, would you mind just talking to us a little bit about the inspiration behind Alegba's monologue?
Alegba monologue, I was inspired to create this, not on something necessarily positive, but the loss of so many Black lives in the street to gun violence from law enforcement and other sources. And the mass incarceration that keeps increasing, and then the private prisons that became profitable to so many. And what was going on there. So I know of Terrell Alvin McCraney's work, brilliant work about the brother and sister size, and a section of that work that had to do with mass incarceration. And it's called the Alegba monologue. And it speaks about a man in prison crying and shouting out for his brother. And so I created this section based on Terrell Alvin McCraney's work, Legba monologue. And Legba is one of the Yoruba god that opens the pathway for the other gods to enter, and he usually is called in before the ceremony begins. And Ogun is the god of war and And so Terrell brought in these 2 Yoruba Orishas as part of the dialogue in his work, and I used this to create the dance, the Legba monologue, that shows the devastation of Black men in the prison system.
One night, we was in, and we was locked up. He ain't been in there that long. Yeah. I hadn't been in there that long. But he was strong, quiet, to himself, singing to himself always. Most beautiful man ever seen. He called for you. One night he just said, "I want my brother! Somebody call my brother!" This man, this grown man, crying for his brother, sobbing into the night. "Oh, come for Juice tonight!" I thought to myself, they gonna get him for that. They gonna hurt him for being so soft, but no. There was a wail in that call. He called on you like pastors call on Jesus. One for you like the sun wants to shine. And you can't do nothing but grieve for a man who misses his brother like that. Sound like a bear trapped in some flesh-tearing snare, crying like that. Man, can't mock no man in that much earthly pain. He make all of us miss our brothers, even the ones we never even had. The whole jailhouse quiet. The guards stopped out of respect for that man mourning the loss of his brother. And all you can hear is the clanging of that man's voice, bouncing on the cement and the steel, chiming like a bell. Till he calmed down. Till he just whispering your name now. My brother. My brother. Where my brother? Gurgling up out from under the tears. My brother. I say to myself, man, I gotta meet him. That brother. That brother that make a man cry out. I gotta meet him. I gotta meet this old goon size.
Well, my arts cup is definitely full for the night. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone on this panel for sharing your thoughts and your insights and how your art form speaks to the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as your contributions to it and what Black History Month means to you. And thank you so much to everybody who was able to attend with us tonight. It has definitely been a great experience, and hopefully many more in the future to come. Now, while I want to open up for some questions and answers, just a quick period of that, while everybody gets ready in the chat, if we could, panelists, please let our attendees know where they can go to donate or contribute to your organization, starting with Mr. Miles.
Thank you very much, Zaylin. Absolutely. We encourage everyone to go out and offer your support to the South Florida people of color by visiting our website. We have a donate page or a support page. Our website is the word South Florida, SOUTHFLORIDA, and the letters POC.org. southfloridapoc.org. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Holifield? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, and thank you for this opportunity. You may support Miami MOCAAD by going to our website, to the donate page at Miami MOCAAD, MOCAAD .org, MiamiMOCAAD.org. And you may follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram.
Wonderful. And of course, the Peter London Global Dance Company, please look out for our website at plgdc.org, as well as all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as we have plenty of things planned in the coming future, and we're excited about the 2021 season. And we are currently hiring for an administrative assistant position. So if you know anybody who is interested, please feel free to reach out to our website and find those details on there. And at this moment, I want to see if anybody has any questions. I'm going in the chat. I see you have the links there for everyone to donate. Thank you all so much. Nice to know your supporters are in the audience. Anything? No? Okay. Well, I wanted to, there is a question here. I wanted to see, Ron, there was a question for you, sir. So of course, in honor of Black History and Black History Month, we also know that the South Florida People of Color's mission is to dismantle racism in all its forms through education and advocacy. But of course, racism is not always just an easy conversation to have. So I want to know kind of what is your process or your steps that you take when you want to have that conversation, but somebody isn't so open to it.
Absolutely, yes. That's one of the very first places we begin. We always try to create an environment that people feel safe in and that people feel brave in. And the way that you do that is you establish the ground rules for engagement up front. We call them agreements. We lay down the foundation for how we're going to, first of all, accept that we're going to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, talking about these issues and dealing with the truth, however we see it. People's perspectives can be very convincing. And so we have to be open-minded and learn to challenge each other respectfully. One of the things I think that really gives folks comfort in when they engage with us is we teach them how to, in the moment, express that something doesn't feel or sound good to the soul, to the ears. And so we encourage people to say, ouch. That requires some unpacking. And, you know, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion facilitator myself, that's an opportunity for those of us in the room who have the gift of hearing people and relaying what it is that they are actually trying to say. And so my extra training in linguistics and languages really helps me to give people the words they need to say what it is that they're actually feeling. So that's just one of the ways that we go about helping people to be okay with approaching topics that are difficult to discuss.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And it looks like we had one other question. Sharon asks, has any one of you experienced racism in your dance career? And if so, how did you deal with it? So to our dancers, Ron, Mr. London, Terrence, anybody who wants to take this one on?
Racism, as in blatant racism, as in someone possibly using derogatory names and things of that nature. No, I have not. I think when it comes down to racism, some people may do some things that are actually quite racist without realizing it. And that doesn't make it any less racist. I have had individuals who work in tech. Not that I feel like tech, crew are not artists by any means. I think they are brilliant individuals. I think it requires a brilliant mind to light a stage or, a piece of, of artistry. But I did have a lighting director to say something very derogatory to me once in regards to me needing to wear makeup. And it was an issue in regards to, plainly, I'm too dark. And when you put a Black man on stage with a bunch of, I'm just gonna say the term, white people, there are certain sensitivities that you should take into consideration as a professional in regards to, in a sense, trying to accomplish your goal or your job, right? Which your job can be rather hard, I assume, with you trying to light a stage with one dark guy and a lot of, white women or men on stage. I can see how difficult that may be. But if you don't have the words, right, to articulate, then choose someone else and choose them wisely so that you can articulate whatever it is that you need without being racist, right? Because it hurts. Either way it goes, it does hurt. And so that was one instant that I did have. And I think that it happens quite often when it comes down to, stereotypes, which is the death of a lot of really, really great relationships, things that could turn out to be amazing relationships, most of them end because of someone's lack thereof when it comes down to just having a true, authentic and, sensitive ideal and acknowledgement of how to deal with, artists that you haven't been accustomed to dealing with. Case in point, when I was on a cruise ship, huge issue when it comes down to cross-cultural communication. And just honestly, for me, it's the acknowledgement, right? It's the acknowledgement that you have never worked with and specifically in my case, a black man, a black male, man of color. I mean, and to say that and say, hey, I've never worked with someone like you before, that poses a challenge for me, right? Let's have a conversation versus you doing things the way that you would necessarily always do them without taking into consideration the people that it will affect, right? And in this case, that's something that's been done in this country. And that's one of the reasons why racism exists, is because you want to, ride out the ideals of privilege without considering the humanity of someone of color, right? You don't want to see me as human. You don't want to acknowledge my equity when it comes, or my equality when it comes down to, I deserve to be on this stage just as much as anyone else. I deserve to be in this space just as much as anyone else, right? And I demand, equality. And if that's something that you cannot give to me as not only just as an artist, but as a human being, then these are not relationships that I would want. And so sadly, I think that's racism is a thing that ends many, many, many relationships when we talk about collaboration. But those are the experiences that I've had.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Did anybody else want to add to that? Like Ronnie said in the chat, cast is the bone and race is the skin. Race is a social construct. Couldn't have put it more eloquently.
That's actually Ronnie Bennett, the executive director of the South Florida People of Color.
Okay. And that's why it was put so eloquently. Ron, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Oh, you just went on mute, sir.
Sorry. Well, just that, when Terrence was talking, his story reminded me of something else that we really try to center people on and around, which is that we have to recognize the impact over our intent. So that's one of the sort of slippery slopes when people say, well, I didn't intend to offend you. And you're like, but you offended me. So let's start at the impact of what you did and work our way back to a place where we can repair whatever has gone wrong. And because I'm the person who's in that space, we have to make space, we have to hold space as much as we have to take space. So it's this whole negotiation that goes on. And that's why laying down the agreements when you encounter these kinds of conversations with people helps to sort of give you something to rest on and know that you'll be focusing on solution rather than just, I'm gonna whine for a few minutes.
Well put. I can tell you throughout all these conversations, if you couldn't tell, I'm just speechless because I just love the insight and the knowledge that each of you bring. And definitely thank you for sharing each of your experiences as well, just being a Black person in America, specifically also in art as well. So with that being said, I know that we ran a little bit over, but it's been a great night. Thank you, everyone, the panelists, to all of our attendees for joining us tonight. If you want to check out this live again, it will be available soon on our YouTube page, as well as the excerpts from Black Men's Story. We will be putting that on our YouTube page as well in honor of Black History Month. So look out for those links to share with all of your friends and family. Okay, well, with that, I say thank you all and good night, everybody.